Transfer the money to your sister or you are not leaving this house tonight. My father didn't say, happy birthday. He just pushed the $500,000 inheritance my grandmother left me across the table like it was evidence in a trial. When I didn't pick up the pen, my mother stood up and deadbolted the front door. Then she turned her tablet toward me. It was a live camera view of our driveway, a black SUV idling outside. The collectors are here, Ava. Either you cover Mia's debt, or they walk in. Before I tell you what I did next, drop a comment and tell me the worst thing your family ever pressured you to pay for. I'm reading every one of them. I glanced at the bolted door, then back at my parents. Panic would have been easy, useful even, but panic is expensive and I don't waste assets. In my profession, when numbers don't add up, you don't argue with a spreadsheet, you trace the error to its source. And the error tonight was sitting between us on polished oak. A grocery store cupcake with lopsided frosting and a single candle that hadn't been lit. I stared at it, and for a heartbeat, I wasn't 30. I was 9 again, at this same table, hands folded tight, wishing so hard it hurt that my parents would look at me the way they looked at Mia. I wished that just once I wouldn't feel like a contingency fund or a backup retirement policy, but their daughter. I watched Carol's fingers dig into the envelope and David's gaze flick toward the window where the SUV idled. This wasn't a birthday. It was an extraction. In that instant, I leaned forward in my mind and blew out that 9-year-old's candle myself. The smoke didn't carry sugar. It carried something final. The hopeful child in me went quiet. The strategist stepped in. I didn't tremble. I didn't plead. I let my breathing even out. Fear clouds judgment, and tonight, clarity was my only leverage. If I wire that money tonight, I said, my tone level and almost bored, Mia won't see sunrise with her kneecaps intact. Carol's mouth fell open, her outrage stuttering. What are you talking about? It's cash! It fixes this! It's $500,000! Dad stepped closer to the table like proximity could force logic into me. You don't just wire $500,000, I replied. The second that transfer hits her account, the bank's compliance software flags it. Anything over 10 grand triggers internal review. $500,000? That's an automatic freeze pending source of funds verification, suspicious activity report, financial crimes enforcement network. They lock it down before Mia can withdraw $1. David's jaw tightened. So we tell the bank it's a gift. And invite a gift tax audit? I tilted my head. Or worse, have the transfer reversed while those people outside are still counting minutes? If the collectors don't get liquid cash by morning, they don't file paperwork. They escalate. And if Mia suddenly shows unexplained funds with outstanding gambling markers and unpaid taxes, the state seizes it before she can blink. Carol's eyes flicked toward the driveway camera feed, still glowing on her tablet. The SUV idled, headlights off, a dark shape behind tinted glass. So what do we do? She demanded. We can't wait for some bureaucrat to bless the transfer. We don't wait, I said. We reposition. The word hung there, clinical and sharp. Reposition what? Dad asked. The asset. I let that settle. Let them picture marble counters, imported tile, the pool they bragged about to neighbors. If those collectors run a property search, and they will, they'll see you own this house outright. No mortgage, pure equity. That makes you a target twice over. They take the money and then lean on you for collateral, or they skip the money entirely and pressure you into signing the deed under duress. You're exposed. Carol swallowed. So hide it. Exactly. How? Dad's voice cracked on the single syllable. We transfer the title tonight into a holding company, a shell acquisition. I structure it as a rapid corporate purchase. The property moves out of your personal name and into an entity before anyone can file a lien. On paper, you liquidate it. There's no personal asset left to threaten. Carol blinked. A company? Who owns it? A trust structure, I said smoothly. Blind management, layered membership. It's standard asset insulation for high-risk exposure events. Most of that was real terminology. The context was not. Dad stared at me like I'd started speaking another language. Will it be fast? Faster than a traditional escrow. Digital deed filing, remote notarization. I can have documentation prepared in under 20 minutes. Carol shoved her laptop toward me. Then do it! Stop talking and fix it! I opened my computer slowly, deliberately. The screen's glow reflected in their faces, pale and anxious. They thought I was scrambling to save Mia. I was calculating restitution. While Dad rushed to his office for the property documents, I looked around the dining room. The reclaimed hardwood beams, the imported stone backsplash visible through the archway, the custom cabinetry Carol loved to show off. I knew the invoices for all of it, because I knew where the seed money came from. 3 years ago, when I earned my compliance certification, I ran a quiet audit out of curiosity. Old transfers, closed accounts, discrepancies and dates that never made sense. The numbers led me back to a custodial account opened in my name when I was 16, my grandmother's education fund. It had been emptied the same year Mia's third business venture collapsed under credit card debt and casino markers. The withdrawal authorization bore my forged digital signature. Carol said the market downturn had gutted it. The market didn't spend $28,000 at a private rehab facility in Arizona 2 months later. They hadn't just favored her, they'd financed her. And now they wanted me to refinance the mistake again. Dad rushed behind me, breathless, clutching the deed packet. I pulled up a blank operating agreement template and began typing. Carol watched my fingers move. "You're doing the right thing, Ava." I didn't look at her. "I know." Dad set the deed packet beside my laptop like he was placing a fragile offering on an altar. His hands were shaking. Sweat darkened the collar of his shirt. Carol hovered behind him, one hand gripping the back of his chair, the other clutching her tablet with the driveway feed still glowing like a silent threat. "Tell me what to click," he said. "Open the county recorder's site," I replied. "We'll need the parcel number and current vesting language." He blinked. "English, Ava." "Top line of the deed. Read it to me." He did, stumbling over the legal phrasing. I typed as he spoke, drafting a clean transfer document into a newly formed entity, Northbridge Strategic Holdings, LLC. It sounded bland, forgettable. Safe. "Who owns Northbridge?" Carol asked again, suspicion creeping into her tone. "It's manager managed," I said, "which means the ownership isn't publicly listed in the same way. Privacy layer. Asset shielding." "And the manager?" Dad pressed. "Appointed at formation." "You?" Carol's eyes narrowed. "Temporarily," I said, "to expedite filing." That was technically true. I would be the only member. Dad hesitated, fingers hovering over the trackpad. "This feels extreme." "Extreme is men sitting in an SUV outside your house," I replied calmly. "This is paperwork." Carol leaned down, her voice sharp against his ear. "Sign it." He didn't move. "Why are you helping us?" he asked suddenly, looking at me. "Really helping us? You've kept your distance for years. You barely come for holidays. Why now?" The question lingered heavier than the threat outside. "Because exposure spreads," I said evenly. "If Mia implodes publicly, investigators don't stop at her name. They trace family ties, shared addresses, financial overlaps. Your reputations matter to me." It was a lie shaped like logic. Carol's patience snapped. She moved around the table and grabbed my wrist, her nails digging into my skin hard enough to sting. "She's helping because she has to," Carol hissed. "You think she wants our house dragged into court records? You think she wants headlines tied to her name?" "Let go," I said quietly. "Or what?" Carol shot back, eyes blazing. "You'll walk out? You can't. I can call the police right now and tell them your daughter is unstable. Tell them you're spiraling again. Remember sophomore year? The panic attacks? The medication?" Dad stiffened. "Carol, now," she continued, voice dropping to something cold and deliberate, "I will swear you're a danger to yourself. I'll file emergency guardianship paperwork by morning. I will tell a judge you're not competent to manage significant assets. You think your job survives that? A compliance officer flagged for mental instability?" The air thinned. "You wouldn't," I said, but a part of me knew she absolutely would. "Try me." I studied her face. Not anger, not fear. Calculation. Mia wasn't the only gambler in this family. For years, I'd convinced myself their favoritism was blindness, not malice, that love just skewed unevenly. But this wasn't skewed. This was weaponized. She was prepared to strip me of autonomy to maintain her preferred narrative. Slowly, I pried her fingers off my wrist. "You're right," I said, my voice steady. "Family reputation comes first. Let's finish before we lose our filing window." Dad swallowed. "Filing window?" I nodded toward the clock. "County e-record submissions batch at 8. If we miss cutoff, the timestamp rolls to tomorrow morning. That leaves hours for a lien to slip in if anyone's already initiated paperwork." Another lie, but believable. Dad inhaled sharply and clicked the signature line. Digital acknowledgement requested. Carol followed, jaw tight. Accepted. The confirmation page loaded with a green banner. Submission received, pending recording. Dad sagged back in his chair. So the house is protected? It's no longer in your personal name, I said. Carol exhaled like she'd been underwater. Good. Now transfer the money. I closed the deed window slowly. One step at a time.
Transfer it now, Carol said, her composure fraying again. You said once the house is insulated, we move the money. I folded my hands on the table. The money doesn't move to Mia. Both of them froze. What? Dad asked. If I wire $500,000 into her account, it's traceable and reversible. We need to convert it into something less vulnerable, a structured obligation. Carol stared at me. Speak clearly. We purchase the debt. Silence. The collectors don't care who pays, I continued. They care that they're paid. If I acquire Mia's outstanding markers directly through an intermediary entity, the obligation shifts. The pressure shifts. No public transfer to her name, no frozen account. Dad blinked. You can just buy the debt? Through a negotiator, yes. Discounted even. Distrust obligations rarely trade at face value. That part wasn't entirely false. Carol leaned closer. And then? Then Mia owes the entity. Which is yours, Dad said slowly. Correct. Carol's eyes sharpened. That doesn't help us. It helps you more than wiring cash blindly, I replied. Once the debt is legally reassigned, the men outside lose leverage. They can't threaten collection on something they no longer own. Dad rubbed his forehead. How fast? Fast enough if they're motivated by cash tonight. I can call a broker. I didn't mention that the broker would simply confirm a wire to an escrow account I controlled. Carol paced, heel sharp against hardwood. And if they refuse? Then we're back where we started, I said evenly. Except now your house is already transferred. She stopped pacing. Transferred to your company, she corrected. Yes. Dad's gaze flickered between us. You said it was temporary. I said it removed immediate exposure. That wasn't an answer. The driveway camera chimed with motion detection. All three of us turned toward the tablet screen. The SUV's driver's side door opened slightly, then shut again. Carol's breath hitched. Do it, Ava. Call whoever you need to call. I picked up my phone and stepped into the kitchen, dialing a number I knew would go to voicemail. I spoke just loudly enough for them to hear fragments. Yes, I have a distressed marker account. 500 principal, immediate settlement. Proof of funds available. I'll need assignment documentation tonight. I ended the call and returned. They'll respond within 10 minutes, I said. They want liquid resolution before midnight. Dad nodded, clinging to the illusion of process. While we waited, my gaze drifted to the framed family photos lining the wall. Mia's graduation, Mia's cheer competitions, Mia's engagement party that lasted 3 months before imploding. My own milestones were there too, technically. Smaller frames, tucked between. When I graduated summa cum laude, Carol had said she was proud. When Mia completed court-ordered rehab, Carol had thrown a catered celebration. Priorities were measurable. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the blank notification screen, then looked up. They'll accept $450 for full assignment, I said. Carol's eyes widened. That's a discount. Distressed paper often is. Dad swallowed. So you pay $450 and the remaining $50? Administrative reserve, I replied smoothly. Filing fees, processing, tax implications. In reality, the reserve would cover legal consultation for the eviction notices already drafted on my laptop. Fine, Carol snapped. Do it. I turned to the screen toward them, displaying a wire authorization form I had pre-filled with Northbridge's account details. Sign here acknowledging voluntary satisfaction of property transfer as part of financial restructuring, I said. Dad hesitated again. Why is that necessary? Because once funds move, I need documentation that today's transfer wasn't coerced. Standard liability protection. Carol didn't hesitate. She grabbed the stylus and signed. Dad followed, slower. Accepted. I clicked submit on the mock wire portal. Processing, I murmured. Carol sagged into her chair. It's over? I met her eyes. Almost. Carol leaned forward. Show me the confirmation. I rotated the laptop so they could see the transfer screen. A clean interface. Transaction pending. Settlement in progress. It looked official. It looked final. Dad let out a long breath that rattled at the edges. So the collectors get their money tonight?
They'll receive proof of assignment and confirmation of funds, I said. That's all they care about. Carol pressed a hand to her chest. Thank God. No, I thought. Not him. The driveway camera chimed again. This time the SUV's headlights flicked on, then off. A pause. Then the vehicle rolled slowly down the street and disappeared from frame. Dad stared at the tablet. They're leaving. Of course they are, I said calmly. Carol laughed, a thin, hysterical sound. We did it. No, I corrected silently. I did. Dad reached for me like we were about to share some kind of reconciliation. Ava, Don't, I said softly. He froze. Carol straightened. What now? Now, I said, closing the transfer window, we formalize the internal side of this. Internal side? I opened a second document. Debt Assignment Agreement. Borrower, Mia Reynolds. Assignee, Northbridge Strategic Holdings, LLC. Why is her name on that? Carol demanded. Because the obligation has shifted. Shifted how? Dad asked. I folded my hands again, resting them on the keyboard. Mia no longer owes external collectors. She owes Northbridge. Carol frowned. That's what you said? Yes. And you own Northbridge? Yes. The silence stretched. Dad's voice came out low. So she owes you? Correct. Carol's expression hardened. That's temporary. No, I said evenly. It's enforceable. Her chair scraped against the floor as she stood. You said this was restructuring. It is. For us. For you, she snapped. I met her gaze without blinking. 3 years ago, you drained my custodial account to cover Mia's third collapse. You forged authorization. You told me the market crashed. Dad flinched. Carol didn't. You have no proof, she said. I slid a printed bank statement across the table. Transaction history highlighted, dates circled. I do. Dad stared at the page like it might rearrange itself if he looked long enough. You audited us? He whispered. I verified discrepancies. Carol's voice turned icy. That was family money. It was in my name. It was for the household. It was for my education. Mia needed help, Carol shot back. And I didn't? I asked quietly. Silence answered. The collectors outside were never the only threat in this house, just the most visible. Dad sank back into his chair. So what are you saying? I'm saying the debt was already mine long before tonight. I just formalized it. Carol's face went pale. You planned this? Yes. From the moment you slid that inheritance check across the table like a ransom demand? The wire you sent, Dad said slowly, did it actually? No, I replied. No money left my account tonight. Carol staggered back a step. You lied? I protected my assets. The SUV outside, Dad whispered. A rental parked 3 houses down. I arranged it. Carol's breath came shallow and fast. You manipulated us. You threatened institutionalization to manipulate me, I said calmly. You invoked guardianship to strip my autonomy. Consider this proportional response. Dad stared at the deed confirmation still glowing green on the screen. The house is legally owned by Northbridge Strategic Holdings, LLC, I said, filed and timestamped. Carol lunged for my laptop. I snapped it shut before her fingers reached the keyboard. Don't, I warned. We'll sue you, she hissed. On what grounds? Voluntary transfer? Signed restructuring agreement? Attempted concealment of assets to avoid collection exposure? Dad's shoulders sagged. What do you want? I stood. Vacancy. Carol stared at me. You'd throw us out? I met her gaze. No, you already did that years ago. This is just paperwork catching up. My phone buzzed in my hand. Motion alert from Mia's apartment building. I glanced at the live feed thumbnail, her kicking at her own locked door, frantic. Looks like your daughter is having a long night, I said. I stepped toward the front door and unlocked the deadbolt myself. You have 30 days written notice, I added over my shoulder. After that, occupancy converts to tenancy at will. Carol's voice cracked. Ava! Family reputation comes first, I reminded her. Then I walked out into the night air, leaving them in a house that no longer belonged to them. 30 days later, the house stands empty. My parents are packing boxes in a short-term rental across town. The LLC holds everything. The accounts are locked. Grandma wired seed capital into Northbridge this morning. No conditions this time. My signature didn't tremble. I didn't destroy the family. I just stopped funding the damage. If you've ever chosen yourself over blood, you understand.